1914 marks the start of the seminal catastrophe of the 20th century. World War I was a conflict unlike the world had ever seen and has seen since. While surpassed in horror and numbers of casualties mere decades later, there could be no doubt that a primary cause of World War II was in fact its predecessor. Not only can the aftermath of World War I be seen in conflicts raging still today, the level of stupidity and incompetence within the war remains uneclipsed. This is a story about a young man who had his life tragically cut short by this conflict, a young man who had such potential, a young man who is my great-great-uncle. William Pankhurst grew up in Taree, a town, smaller then, on the north coast of New South Wales. Born in 1896, he grew up in interesting times, with the Federation of Australia happening when he was about 5. He lived with his family, including his sister, who had also travelled to war, in a small house in a small bedroom. William was a bright and talented teenager, as he won a scholarship with a grant when he was 15 years old. His success at school is not only shown by his scholarship, but also the fact that he was still in school at 15, a rarity for someone of his station at the time. His success at school led him to quite a good position as clerk in the forestry office in Taree. One of the chief industries of Taree was logging, especially of the prized rosewood, and working in the government overseeing that industry was an important position. So with great promise for the future, war happened. The meat grinder of the Western Front was matched by the propaganda and the culture back home, with thousands of young men being told that if England were defeated, then Australia's future would be bleak. Also, a fellow soldier in my great-great-uncle's battalion, M. Delves, said to the newspaper that Prussian, the leading state in the German Empire, Prussian militarism is the greatest curse on the modern world. I think another militaristic German faction was a greater curse upon the world. So with this propaganda at least somewhat influencing him, and an utmost sense of duty to one's nation and family in his mind, William enlisted to the 34th Battalion of the AIF on the 24th of March 1916, 1 month before the anniversary of the Gallipoli landings. He travelled to England for training, and he met up with his sister there for Christmas between stints at the front. William and his battalion took part in the famous battle for Messines Ridge, where the Hill 60 explosion was detonated. But before fighting in this large battle, he spent part of the worst winter in the war on the front, where temperatures were so cold that it froze the blankets that were to keep men warm. So after this great hardship, and no small amount of horror, on the 13th of July in 1917, my great-great-uncle was shot in the head. He died the next day of his wounds. Earlier this year, I went to visit my great-great-uncle's grave in France. It was a hard experience, but valuable, as the people there still take so much care for the men who died to protect their country. And while that war was horrible, and so very unnecessary, there can be no contestation, and no doubt that the men who fought and died were so very brave and loved their families so very much.